Hello, I'm Kathy Orms, and I'm a member of the board of Children of Vietnam. And as a delightful addition to our Children of Vietnam benefit art auction, I'm very pleased to welcome Suzanne Lecht. She works with Vietnamese artists and has graciously agreed to share some of her knowledge and experience. Suzanne, can you tell us about how you got to know our organization and your thoughts on our projects?
Thank you, Kathy. I'm very happy to do that. My dear friends, Dick and Dabney Schmidt, knowing that I'm an avid bicyclist and love Vietnam, told me about the Children of Vietnam bicycle ride in March of 2019 from Hue to Da Nang. So I signed up for the ride, not knowing, of course, what a delightful treat I was in for. And I met Ben, of course, the founder, and Hung Luong. And, as the ride went on, I was just so impressed with everyone, everyone that was on the ride, and especially, of course, Ben with the way he related to the Vietnamese people, the common villagers, and just with humility, kindness, respect. And then as we visited, of course, the projects and the people that the children of Vietnam were helping, it was a very impressive, moving example of the best of humanity, helping people that are underprivileged and just empowering them to build a future, educating children, uh, just a delight.
Thank you. And for those of you who have not had the opportunity to meet Ben, he did this ride in 2019, which is the last time we were able to be there. And he was 87 years old at the time, and he did the entire ride. So he's a pretty remarkable person in many ways. Suzanne, you've lived in Hanoi for over 27 years working with Vietnamese artists on a worldwide basis. Can you tell us a little bit about your journey into the discovery of Vietnam and its culture?
Well, that was kind of a magical carpet ride, I must say. I moved to Japan in 1984 and lived there for almost 10 years, but with my husband. But in 1992, he died very suddenly of pancreatic cancer. So after he died, I stayed in Japan, not really knowing where to go. And then, I guess, in the very beginning of '93, I knew I wanted to stay in Asia. I went to many countries: Shanghai, Beijing, Bangkok, Hong Kong, looking for some big passion to build my life around. And then in August of '93, a very dear friend of mine, an American woman, Mary Walsh, who is a producer to this day for CBS News, she was the news producer in Tokyo at the time. And she had just come back from Vietnam. And she came to my house and she brought an article from a magazine called the Vietnam Investment Review. And in that article, I'm going to try to show you all. It was about art, a group of artists. And I don't, you probably can't see this, but it was called Arts Gang of Five, the ones to hold a third joint exhibition of art from the heart. And this wonderful group of five artists, they got out of art school in 1980. So, of course, this was after the war had ended. Um, and at that time, Vietnam, was very poor and trying to recuperate. So they weren't compelled to do propaganda works of art, and they were really, everybody was left alone. So all of a sudden, they started painting, their hopes and their dreams and their spiritual life and things they loved, and being influenced. When they went to art school, the French started the École des Beaux-Arts in Hanoi in 1925, and it was an exact model of the Paris school. So they were taught this very traditional Western um, methodology to their art. So in the works of art that I saw by the Gang of Five, I could see a little bit of Matisse, a little bit of Cezanne, and yet with all this Asian imagery. So it was this wonderful fusion, of East and West. And I studied art. I'm a great lover of art. So when I saw the works of art, I thought, oh my goodness, we as Americans, we don't know anything about who'd ever seen Vietnamese art before, and certainly contemporary art. The French had seen a lot of the masters when they were here. So I thought, wow, I could go to this country, that has this tragic shared past with my country. And I could work with these artists and I could make a bridge through art and through the spirit of art, and art that didn't have anything to do with the war. It was about life and hope and the future, and about the beauty of the spirit, of all of us, of humanity. So I literally called a moving company and said, pack me up, I'm moving to Hanoi. And I arrived here, 1 month later, I guess, in January of 94. And then, completely by chance, on my very first day at the Ho Chi Minh Museum, I met one of the Gang of Five. So
Oh, wow.
people always say, "Oh, wow, that's so amazing," and they say, "Wow, that," and I say, it was amazing. I said, I met this young man, and he took me to see Phan Quan Vinh, and the, of course, we as Westerners, we would say, "Oh, that's so serendipitous," but people in Asia, they say, "Oh, that's nonsense." That's your destiny. You were supposed to come here. And actually, as I got to know this artist, Pham Quan Vinh, who helped me so much, he said, "What took you so long?" So that's how I got here. And I've been here ever since. That's what, 27 years ago.
So you have a real sense of adventure and with the ability to take some risks too.
Well, Kathy, that's a beautiful thing that you say. And it gives me entree to kind of my mantra in life. Because at that time, when I thought about that, of course, it's a little scary. I don't know anybody, and it's this country, that we had this terrible war with. But then I thought to myself, Suzanne, what is the worst thing that could happen to you if you go there? And I thought, well, the worst thing that could happen to me has already happened to me. My husband died, the love of my life. So it's like, I can go anywhere, I can do anything. And I really feel that about life. Life goes on, people live, they die, it's natural, and just jump in the stream. If you don't like it, you can get out. You can always get out.
Okay. Well, thank you. Can you tell us a little bit about Vietnamese art, its history, and its influences from the culture? I mean, you've kind of started telling us a little bit about all the way back to 1925, but can you elaborate a little bit more?
Yeah, thank you. Yes, as I said, the French established the École des Beaux-Arts for all of Indochina. So, to serve, of course, their colonies and to educate. So, they brought over all these French artists. And so the Vietnamese artists had this wonderful exposure to Western civilization. And then when the Soviets supported Vietnam, of course, they get all this Central Asia and all that ancient old culture. And then, of course, from China. So they had this very rich, worldly, artistic heritage and started producing works from the Stone Age, 8,000. But what I find interesting, as so they've had all this influence, but then officially, after 1975, the country was completely closed and nobody was allowed to come here until the early 90s. So they leaned, of course, on all that heritage. They had no internet here, so there was very little influence as far as what was happening in the outside world at that time. But as the country started to open up in the early 90s, business people from Europe or from Australia, from America, and people like myself started coming. And, of course, I heard about these artists and was working with them at the time. And then a lot of Americans that would came at that time heard about this American lady that was here that knew the artist and would call me, and I would take them to the artist studios. And in that way, and people would try to bring books and anything that we could, to these people. So the Vietnamese, actually, when I first came here in January of '94, one of the Gang of Five, his name is Deng Xuan Hua, was in Boston at the time. He was on a grant from the Asian Cultural Council to come and to exhibit and to have a residency. And he was also sponsored by David Thomas, who's an American artist, is a Vietnam veteran, one of the first people to come back to Vietnam, who had started an art foundation. So all of these people, myself, we started exhibiting Vietnamese artists in America and abroad. I did my first exhibition in Hong Kong in '97. And Vietnam at that time was considered like the rising tiger of Southeast Asia. So there was a lot of interest, and people love the art, and you'll see why.
Great. It sounds like there is a big interest in Vietnamese art today. And how do you see it on the international world stage?
There's been like I said, in the early '90s, there was this big run. I mean, Vietnam was a new country, newly open. People were so curious. There was a big market, and then, of course, several market crashes. But that continues to this day. The Vietnamese artists now are being shown at the Venice Biennale, in Germany, all over the world, Australia. Tran Lung, one of the Gang of Five, was actually curated an exhibition that was a big part in 2013 at the Guggenheim in New York.
Oh, wow.
And some of the art of the Gang of Five's members are in that permanent collection, the Guggenheim. So we're seeing, and today, of course, as we all know, with the internet, art is everywhere. We're internationally known. But I think the people worldwide, there's a lot of interest in Vietnam within Southeast Asia, because it's a very interesting country in the sense that a lot of the other countries, Indonesia, Thailand, Cambodia, Laos, they were all, they didn't have that deep background from the Western French civilization. So Vietnam is this interesting fusion, it's this mix of East and West that makes their art very appealing internationally. So we're seeing a lot of interest in people exhibiting and artists going abroad. So I think and they're auctioned at Christie's and Sotheby's, and so they're finally making their way. It's not easy, of course, because life with art is never easy, but it's such a beautiful expression of humanity and how to understand cultures.
Mhm. Thanks. Can you tell us a little bit about subject matter and concepts that are prevalent in Vietnamese art, especially some of the works that we're presenting in our auction for Children of Vietnam?
I would be happy to, because I think it's subject content that is one of the driving forces of the appeal of Vietnamese art. Because like the culture, as I said, of course, Vietnam has this really old, ancient artistic culture from 8,000, from the Stone Age. But even in the Stone Age, you could see what was depicted in the artwork were scenes from daily life, people working in the rice fields, families sharing meals, uh, their pagodas, their spiritual life, their respect for their ancestors, this deep reverence for nature and for the balance of nature with life. And that's in all of these wonderful works that John Merson and his wife have donated for this auction. You will see Le Kong Nhan is known for his still lifes. He's one of the artists that was from the Beaux-Arts school tradition. So it's a little more traditional, but the still lifes. And then Van Nock is a more contemporary artist with these very playful portraits that really depict I think what brings people to Vietnam and keeps people so interested in Vietnamese art and the country is of all the countries I've been to in the world, I find the Vietnamese, the people are extraordinarily warm and open and curious and playful. They're very childlike, so they love to play and they have this wonderful sense of humor. And and because they've had thousands of years of wars, they've really learned how to endure, accept, and treasure life and just the basic elements of life, friendship and generosity and honor and respect. And that is something that the world desperately needs today. And it's a sense of deep humanity. And I think that's what comes through in all these wonderful artworks.
Oh, thank you. This has been such a treat. We could go on and on, but I know we were supposed to keep this to a certain amount of time. But thank you for sharing your enthusiasm. And you obviously care a great deal about the Vietnam and the Vietnamese people, and you're sharing your experiences and expertise. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Kathy, and I want to wish you the best of luck with this auction. And I want to encourage all of you viewers to buy this wonderful work of art. Take some of that humanity and put it in your home. And it's really a gesture of not just Vietnamese, this is about all of humanity, how we can help people that are less privileged than we are and build a better world.
Thank you.